This is your chunk of Trump.
Open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
You want the law first, or you want the Iowa State Fair first? Kim, I'll ask you.
Give me the state fair.
Kim, how are you?
Okay.
I want a little fun fair action before you really dig in hard.
All right. Trump dominates the Iowa State Fair, and all of this, while all of his rivals, the Ron DeSantis of the world, the Mike Pences of the world, they're all there at the State Fair too. But like an orphaned skee ball game, they did not get the media attention that Trump got. I mean, it was pretty insane. Albert, I forget what I sent you. Do you have the actual video of him at the State Fair, or what do we have? It's pretty,
it's him. Yeah, it's a shorter video.
Okay, here's a little bit
on stage. Yeah.
Okay, this is him. You can see the crowd around him. Actually, if you roll back of that, Albert, if you roll back of it, you can see him making his way through the crowd, and you see him there, just flanked by all these people. Yeah, he's doing his thing. For those listening, he's in a blue suit with an open collar white shirt, waving. Now I'd skip to...
Careful. We only had a few people, Trump, and I like them.
Do you plan to comply with the judge's order?
There you go. Do you plan on complying with the judge's order?
Well, I'll have to take a look at the order. It's the whole thing is a fake. It was put out by Biden, and they put it out because they can't win an election the fair way. It's all called election interference. Biden put it out because he can't win the fair way. He's way down in the polls. President Trump, did you intend to overturn it?
All right, so there you go, and he continues. So he's he's playing the hits, of course, and he, as I say though, he's right about being way up in the polls, and he's also right about everybody paying attention to him. Of course, he's wrong about it being a Biden hoax.
Question though.
Yeah.
Why? And I don't think the two things are connected, but why do you think that all four of these indictment cases came down at the same time? And does that give any credence to his argument that he's being targeted?
Well, I'd suggested that they didn't all come down at the same time. I mean, these, we've been waiting for them. They've been dropping, I guess you could say, in a cluster, right. But I don't think they've been dropping at the same time. It's not like boom, boom, boom. They all are distinctly different, and the dockets and even the method by which he's being charged federally and on the state level, that's different. I, as you know, have an issue with how long it took a special prosecutor or special counsel, in this case, to be assigned. I think that the Jack Smith assignment should have come way sooner. Yeah. And I fault Merrick Garland for that. And I know everybody worships at the Church of Merrick Garland. I do not. I think Merrick Garland has played too carefully and is walking on eggshells. And you see it even, and then I want to get back, and I'll get back to Trump and what's going on in court. But you see it even in the way that they are so concerned with the Hunter Biden thing that they leave a prosecutor in place who was handling the prosecution prior to being named the special prosecutor, right? They left somebody who was a Trump appointee and who had, I would suggest he might have been agenda-driven. He left him there. 5 years they've had that investigation going on with Hunter Biden. You know how I feel about Hunter Biden also, if you're a regular of the show. I'm not a fan. I think he's abused the system. He's abused himself. He's not a cool guy. But again, he's not serving in the administration, and he's not running for anything. He's being targeted by law enforcement and the criminal justice system. That's what happens when you break the law. John Slade's talking about Donald Trump there. Yeah, exactly.
That is what happens. Imagine that.
So I just think that I think the Democrats, just to finish the point and round it off, I think the Democrats do this. They're so worried about being accused of playing politics that they leave the Trump appointee in and they let him run out the Biden case. Do you think a GOP executive, Trump or anyone else, would leave in a Biden-appointed prosecutor to continue and actually upgrade him to the federal level, which allows him all kinds of permissions, if you want to think of it that way, to go after various information and in other states. Do you think that would happen? No, of course not.
They're playing by the new hardball rules, and Democrats are still playing by the old decorum rules. No.
And Democrats are worried about being accused of playing politics. So let me just cut to what's going on. Didn't mean to digress into Hunter Biden, but because we're on it. So here's what's happening. The thing that I always say, which is, guys, you're going to get accused of playing politics anyway, no matter what you do. You're going to get accused of playing politics. So why do you bend over backwards to make life tough on yourselves by keeping these Trump appointees in and you can say, well, because it's the right thing to do. Not necessarily. You could assign that position to someone else. This is the prosecutor, okay, for the Hunter Biden case, for that investigation. The federal guy, that guy, is it Weiss, who was just upgraded? That's the guy that they all wanted. Jim Jordan wanted him. Matt Gaetz wanted him. They all asked for that guy. Then they get that guy from Biden, and what do? Complain that he's a political appointee. How can they use Weiss? Weiss is weak. Oh my God, it's classic. Weiss is a Biden puppet. Dude, you asked for Weiss not that long ago, just a few months ago. So it's a game that they're always going to play and accuse you of playing politics. And for that reason, you shouldn't worry about it. You can play as ruthlessly as the other side. I don't like the lying that the GOP does, but I'm just saying when it comes to political hardball, you've got to be ready to throw heat. And the Democrats don't throw heat typically like the Republicans do.
I love this comment from John. He says, it's really interesting. He says they turn around and say Biden is mentally incompetent and doesn't know what's going on. But they also say he's running multiple indictments against Trump in multiple states. So what is it? Is he clueless or is he like a mastermind?
So true. Yeah. So true. And by the way, thank you, Neil, for the super sticker. Very cool. Big shout out to Neil Boudreau.
Big shout out.
Yeah. Really appreciate that, Neil. I think also just because you mentioned the Biden thing and his, being called, dementia Biden or whatever they call him, because of his age. I, this weekend, was watching a bunch of interviews and deep dive stuff with who? Harrison Ford. Do you know how old Harrison Ford is? He just finished the Indiana Jones movie, okay? Google it right now. Google how old Harrison Ford is.
He like
I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing 80. What is it, Albert?
81.
Oh,
81.
Wow.
Thank you. Okay. Now, is anybody saying, oh my God, Harrison Ford, he's 81. I'm not going to the Indiana Jones movie, blah, 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 blah. Harrison Ford is rocking the house at 81. Okay. Well, Mark, he's not managing an entire company. Dude, he's managing an entire career. Harrison Ford is way with it and clicked in. And for what I'm told, the guy likes a little bit of the, once in a while. So I think about the Biden thing, and he's, Biden's biking, and he's, look, I get it. He may have a senior moment from time to time, but I don't know that that's the case. And I'm just saying I get it. But they play up this like he's utterly confused all the time. It's just not true.
I'm decades and decades younger, and I have a senior moment every 5 minutes. I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Isn't Harrison Ford still flying planes too? Or
I hope he's not, but he has had a couple of mishaps with the aircraft. Harrison is always a babe, says Julie. Always be a babe, Julie. In my mind.
Totally.
Yeah. So in any case, in Fulton County, Georgia, a grand jury will be presented with findings from their 2.5-year investigation into former President Trump. And they'll decide this week whether Trump will be indicted for interfering in the presidential election in Georgia. He's already been indicted in 3 separate cases, as we've said. He's far ahead of competitors in this 2024 Republican nomination race. But Fani Willis started looking into whether Trump and his associates violated Georgia law shortly after that recording was released. I just need 11,780 votes. And he wanted those votes found. I think some of the most amazing information is coming out of the fact that it would appear that Trump attorneys and those close to Donald Trump actually were in touch with Georgia elections people trying to get access to the computers that had all the election information. And in fact, were able to download that election information off of those Georgia voting machines. You may remember the video of a Georgia election official opening a door and allowing members of that Trump team to go in and grab that information. That's highly illegal. And if you can trace that breadcrumb trail back to Donald Trump, which is what's being suggested now, that there is evidence that Trump's close advisors on the election actually met in the Oval Office about this plan. If you can trace that back to Donald Trump, that should be game over. It is outrageous. It is outrageously illegal. And as I say, that should be the case. Now, that's not the only part of this case, but it's a massive revelation in the case. So I think this Georgia case is, they have him on tape. He's having that mobster-like conversation where you go, I wish that guy wasn't around anymore type conversation. I wish you could find 11,780 votes. You just need to find them. But it goes beyond that. As you're well aware, the recordings extend beyond that soundbite that we're so used to hearing. I think Trump's in big trouble in Georgia. Now, our legal experts have said that case may drag on such that it's not going to wrap up before Election Day. I don't know. Obviously, you'd like it to wrap up before Election Day, but I don't know that it's going to matter in another way as revelations from that case become public. I think it begins to dirty him up a little bit. Now, his core will not leave him. They will stay at his side. But in terms of independent voters, they're going to be looking possibly elsewhere. I think it's a situation for Donald Trump. Legally, that's a problem, but politically, it could be an issue as well. So that's where this Vivek Ramaswamy steps in. Vivek Ramaswamy.
You say his name really well, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. He's a guy who, as I was mentioning, if you missed it before, speaks very well. He uses a lot of very clever phrases like, he always refers to data. I'm data driven, right? When people say, look, I don't have a philosophy here. I'm just data driven. I'm looking at the way things are, right? Well, that sounds good, right? You're data driven, right? And he does a lot of that. I'm just looking at the facts. But the reality is he's, while well-spoken and super confident, he's telling a story that's completely fraudulent about himself, I'd suggest. And he's really made his bones as an anti-wokeism candidate. Now he's forwarding this thing, and he's asking other Republican candidates to do similarly, that if he becomes president, he would pardon Donald Trump. You can say, well, he's not going to become president anyway. Yeah, but it gets the narrative out there that whatever Trump did should be pardoned, because Vivek continues, because it's all political, and I just don't feel as though I've looked. And then he says, I'm data-driven. I've looked at these facts, and I don't think that former President Trump should have been prosecuted in the first place. You looked at the facts? Oh, we haven't even seen the facts. I mean, you were making these statements before these facts were even in evidence. So Vivek's ready to pardon before we even know anything. I love that whole thing. It's reverse engineering your decision, which has already been made. You've already decided you want to let this guy get a pass, and so somehow the facts don't even matter. You, Vivek, Mr. Fact-driven. Here is a little bit of Vivek, and I'll speak after you here. And again, he speaks very, very well.
You mentioned this in your speech. I just want to clarify. Do you think the only reason that we're involved in Ukraine is because of Hunter Biden and Burisma? What is the connection between Hunter Biden and Burisma and our involvement in this war, do you think?
I don't know if everybody could hear it,
Look,
but this is a question to him about whether or not we're involved. This is his here again saying hard fact. His contention is that we're in Ukraine because of Hunter Biden's relationship to Ukraine. You'll remember the Burisma thing. And then Joe Biden, the president's support of Hunter Biden and his central lobbying on behalf of Ukraine. I think that's what he's about to say. Go back just a couple seconds and run it again. Sorry, Albert. Now I'll be quiet. I just want to make sure you heard.
Good hair, though. I just want to say.
Oh, he's got everything's good about Vivek. He looks good, sounds good, everything.
This in your speech. I just want to clarify. Do you think the only reason that we're involved in Ukraine is because of Hunter Biden and Burisma? What is the connection between Hunter Biden and Burisma and our involvement in this war, do you think?
Well, look, I think it is a hard fact that a Ukrainian-affiliated company, a Ukraine state-affiliated company, made a $5 million payment to the son of a sitting vice president, who's now the president of the United States, who is now sending $200 billion of aid to a country without ever identifying what the clear national objective is that we're advancing by sending that money.
Okay, stop right there. Stop right there. Are you telling me, Vivek, really you want me to swallow this, and you're telling everybody else that you think that the $5 million, which I've already said, is dirty money that Hunter got, meaning it's not illegal, but it's just unsavory. It's trading on the name and the implication that you have access. But the reality is Hunter Biden did have access. Come on. Joe Biden knows Hunter Biden is a mess. Okay? He had access to nothing. Joe Biden is a loving dad who tried to support his son. But you're telling me that the $5 million that Hunter Biden was paid is the reason we are in Ukraine? I mean, you've married two disparate things, even though you claim to be fact-driven. You've married them in this ridiculous scenario. It's utterly absurd. You can say, and you can have a reasonable conversation about involvement in Ukraine. But when you say we have no implicit national interest there, we have no interest in Ukraine, and I would take issue with that. Again, I think it can be a confusing thing, but I would certainly take issue with that. And you can talk about Russia and expansionist Russia, and if you don't draw the line, you end up in a situation with Russia encompassing much more of Eastern Europe. But again, leave that all aside. The idea that you could link the Hunter Biden payment to our involvement in Ukraine is utterly absurd. I mean, it's cuckoo. Go ahead, Albert.
Now, it is also further my perspective that this war does not advance American interests. We are further driving Russia into China's hands. We are increasing the risk of nuclear war, and we're depleting capabilities that we may better use in other circumstances. So I think that was the payment to Hunter Biden corrupt? Absolutely it was. Do I think that it has some relationship to our posture towards Ukraine? I think it's likely that it does. And does this affect the way Vladimir Putin may look at the relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine? I think that's a legitimate question to ask, too, because if you're in Putin's shoes, you're saying, wait a minute, here's a country that's paying bribes to the son of the person who's now the U.S. president that's now arming my enemy to the teeth. So, yes, I do think that Hunter Biden has become a geopolitical disaster.
Okay,
already,
right. This is all, now it's just all hyperbole. It's utter hyperbole.
Geopolitical disaster.
No, really? Exactly. And you think that Vladimir Putin says, wait a minute, Hunter Biden was on the Burisma board, got $5 million. I've told you it's corrupt, legal corruption. The same way that big donors donate to your campaign, Vivek, and that's corrupt because they get you to jump when they ask you to. That's corrupt too, but it's legal. It's legal corruption. The political system is filled with examples like this. He wants to make it illegal for most people under 25 to vote. He is more Trump than Trump. The thinking is that, I mean, the political thinking is, of course, that younger people vote Democratic, for the most part, right? He is working for I don't know what the next move is with Vivek, but more than anything, he's rising in the polls, and he gets this kind of forgiveness for Trump and the nastiness of Trump. He gets it out there, and he gets it out there in a far more eloquent and palatable shell than does Donald Trump. He was clocking in at a rock bottom 1.2% on March 31st, the day after the first indictment. That was the back of the pack. I mean, he was even behind Chris Christie. But 2.5 indictments later, Christie's only come up 0.5 percentage point. Ramaswamy has surged to 7.5%. Some polls have him cracking double digits nationally. One poll has him at 11%. He is clearly broken from those who were DeSantis, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, Mike Pence. So I look at this guy. He tells a confident story, and he claims to be data-driven, but the reality is he has no political experience. When he's talking about a geopolitical nightmare or whatever, he's talking out of his butt. He's 37 years old. He's a biotech scientist, multimillionaire. His business provenance, as suggested here, is hazy at best.
That's a dang
provenance is a dang word. Thank you. He went to Yale Law School, but claims he's primarily a scientist and made most of his money in finance before launching a, quote, anti-woke financial firm. He wrote 2 books, became a regular on cable news, got rich on hype and failure. He engineered this is from the New York Times, this part. Quote, he engineered what was at the time the largest initial public offering in the biotechnology industry's history, only to see the Alzheimer's drug at its center fail 2 years later and the company's value tank. Still, he had cashed out at a choice moment, hit it rich, and then transitioned to this grievance entrepreneurism. And he's using some of those winnings to self-fund his campaign. And he's also tapped into the vein of tech money that is always looking for a conservative home. He's close to Peter Thiel, Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, those tech bros. They warm up to Ramaswamy. So all I would say is that you've got to listen to this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But wow, he says it confidently, firmly, and that counts. People respond to that. Meanwhile, we're waiting, are we not, on the DA presenting the case to the grand jury today.
That's
and
right.
So again, we'll know this week about charges out of the Georgia election indictment. This week, we will know more. But there's a lot going on now with the Georgia election indictment, and it will bring in others, I believe, beyond Donald Trump. The Giulianis of the world, the Eastmans of the world.
I was reading a story. It said 12. There are 12 people that are now, in addition to former President Trump, but his attorneys who are maybe caught up in an election voting scheme. There's 12 people expected to be involved in these indictments that when they come, when and if they come.
And she's not coordinated. Willis is not coordinated with Smith, the special counsel. But if the grand jury decides to indict, it would appear that they would. Any defendants are going to have to make their way to Atlanta to be booked and arraigned. A number of them could face multiple charges, and the potential sentences could be, Steve, this is from the New York Times, I believe, or Washington Post. Violating the racketeering law alone could result in a 5 to 20-year sentence. There's also the question of when a trial might occur. And as I was saying before, because of all the other legal things going on with Trump in several other venues, it will be months of pre-trial things like jury selection. And now let me just say this, and then I will wrap up this huge chunk of Trump with his connections to all of these things. The way to beat this, there's only one way to beat it. If you're Trump, the only way to beat it is through jury selection. That is the way to beat it. You have one way out. And if you can get people on that jury who can't be convinced, you're a winner. So jury selection, I believe, and we can ask David Katz about this, we can ask Rothman, et cetera, and we'll ask David K. Johnston tomorrow. I believe jury selection is the get-out-of-jail-free card for Donald Trump, even though they really have him dead to rights. That is your chunk of Trump.
Hold on, I'm almost there.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
for another chunk of Trump.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.